Good morning. This is Erica with Launching Legacies. Welcome to our daily devotional. Today we are going to continue an extended application of biblical stories. And yesterday we talked from the same chapter or same book that we're going to talk to today. When I was doing my devotionals in preparation, I felt like we should address this story and the applications behind it because it's kind of interwoven in the story from yesterday. So the story is about money-hungry vendors, okay? And the application is from them. So when we look at Mark, the 11th chapter, and we go to the 15th verse, we see that Jesus is clearing the temple. So let me just make some clarifications here. So what would happen is the Jewish people at the time would need to make sacrifices. They would need to buy a pigeon or whatever in order to be sacrificed in the temple. So, and they were different. Excuse me, because I don't remember all of the different animals. It's a lot. There's a lot of different animals for different things. I mean, different animals for different things, different types of sacrifice. And there's grain sacrifices, all these different types of sacrifices, which I won't get into because that would kind of detract from what we're about to do. But in order to give the sacrifice, you'd have to have this thing that you needed to sacrifice, the proper thing to sacrifice. And so what would happen was the vendors would set up in the outer court of the temple. They would set up all of these different vending tables, and they would basically be changing money or giving the things that needed to be sacrificed, selling the stuff that needed to be sacrificed. And that would happen in the outer area of the temple. And so then you could buy it and then go make your sacrifice as was required by the Jewish law at the time, the Jewish for the people in the temple. So that was what was happening. And in the 15th chapter, Jesus goes into the temple, and this is what happened. So he says, when they arrived back in Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple and began to drive out the people, buying and selling animals for sacrifice. He knocked over the tables of the money changers and the chairs of those selling doves. Sorry, so I said pigeons, it's doves. And he stopped everyone from using temple as a marketplace. He said to them, the scriptures declare, my temple is to be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have turned it into a den of thieves. And when the leaders, priests, teachers and religious law heard what Jesus had done, they had began planning a plot to kill him. But they were afraid of him because the people were so amazed by his teachings, okay? And then that evening, Jesus left the city, and that's when he interacts with the fig tree again. Okay, so when Jesus goes in, I think one thing that needs to be clarified is he goes in and he's cleaning all these people out. You can't change money. You can't sell these doves. You can't be doing all this stuff because this is not what the temple is for. The temple is for a house of prayer. It's a worship house for people from every nation. But these people who are money changers and all these things are, the cultural implication is that they were stealing, right? They were being unfair. They were charging a higher price. If you go to a tourist site, you're going to pay more for something that would be cheaper. So because you needed to go to the temple to make the sacrifice, if you didn't do it, you pay more there. You would pay more to change your money. Everything was kind of for the benefit or money hungry vendors, basically. So these people are money hungry vendors. They set themselves up in the place of worship. And Jesus was just like, I'm done with this. I'm not about to have this in my temple. I'm not about to let you all exploit other people and in my house of worship. This place is a house of worship. It's a place for people to come together to worship and praise God the Father, to praise and to give thanks and to pray. And you've got this stuff outside, stealing from people, taking advantage of people, doing all these types of things. No, right? And so Jesus becomes very, very indignant and starts to throw stuff over and basically gets the people out of there. Well, as a response, of course, those who are benefiting probably got a kickback, or at least just didn't like the fact that Jesus called their stuff out of order later became very upset and decided they wanted to kill Jesus. Well, and that makes sense, right? Because for them, who are you to tell us that we can't do what we've been doing? Who are you? Even if they're not making a financial benefit, this is the way things have been run. So how are you going to tell us that we're wrong and, that we can't do this or can't do that? And so for Jesus, he comes in, and when he does that, he's doing something that has a great application for our lives. Are we allowing things, we talked about yesterday, things that don't bear good fruit? This thing is just not good. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do, so we need to get rid of it. Now, what about things that we know are just wrong? What about the things that we know are just have bad intentions? What do we do about that? Even Jesus, when he saw things going in the wrong direction, was like, you know what? I'm going to take the action here. My house is called a house of worship. And so what happens when we as a people see things in either the house of worship, okay, around other Christians, around people who are purposed to be doing something, and it's not right and it's not well? Now, there's a way to approach it, right? But do we approach it? Do we deal with things? Do we use this application that Jesus is using here? Do we deal with things and say, wait a minute, no, this is supposed to be a time for prayer. This is supposed to be a time for worship. This is supposed to be a time to glorify God. Our lives are supposed to be used for this purpose, not for these purposes. Our churches are supposed to be used for this purpose, not for these other purposes. This is, the intention needs to be followed through all the way. How well do we do that? How well do we stand up for what the true intention of something is? Now, yesterday we talked about, again, making sure things do what they're supposed to do. Now, what about if it's doing the opposite of what it's supposed to do? So one is useless, the other one is harmful. And so we need to remember that, especially at this time, there are all kinds of counterfeit ways that people can come up with ideas and things that they think should be done. But what is our response when someone is doing something that's counterfeit? What is our response when someone is off and doing something that they know they shouldn't be doing, like stealing from the people of the temple? How do we react? Well, Jesus is telling us how to react here. He's like, look, you need to be just, right? He's making a cause for justice. We need to be just. We need to be right in dealing with other people. We need to be fair, sure. But then also we need to be doing the things that God has intended for us to do with what he's given us. So whatever it is, if it's a church, if it's a life, if it's our money, if it's the way that we treat our family, those things matter to God, because those are things that he's stewarded us for, right, with. So we have a responsibility to steward, to take care of it. These people had a responsibility to take care of the temple so that people can come in and worship and sacrifice. And yet at the same time, instead of doing that, they were trying to make a buck. That's a problem, right? And they're cheating people. That's a problem. So in order to get things back in perspective, sometimes we need to stand up and we need to speak up. And that's the application from this story of these money hungry changers. Is there something that you need to speak up about? Is there something you need to stand up about? Are you intimidated or afraid, unable to do it? I'm going to be praying for you. And I hope that you're praying for Launching Legacies, that we would remember that what God has called us to do, we must do. If he's established something and he wants it to be right, we need to stand up for what's right. It may be difficult. It may seem countercultural, but it's important to keep the integrity of what God has established as what God has established. All right. I will be back again Monday morning with another devotional. Until then, please know we're praying for you. We hope you're praying for us, and be blessed.